We can look back and we can say he should have done this or should have done that, but the fact of the matter is he had to negotiate because he couldn't get to 60. And you look at Bush's 8 years, first 2 years Democrats controlled the Senate, Republicans controlled the House. Middle 4 years Republicans controlled everything. Last 2 years Democrats controlled the House and the Senate. During Bush's 8 years in office, his highest spending year was his last, when Pelosi and Reid were in the House and the Senate, where the deficit was almost $500 billion, $500 billion. And you look at Bush's total 8 years, we added $2 trillion to the deficit, to the debt. $2 trillion. It's a lot of money. $500 billion in that last year. You look at this President Obama's first 2 years, we're adding $3 trillion to the debt. And his own numbers, conservative numbers, show us that we are going $1 trillion a year for the next 10 years in terms of deficit spending. It's just mind-boggling. So when a letter to the editor appears in today's paper that I say one thing and do another, I'm for energy efficiency. We just have to pay for it. And that cash for cockers bill, which is what a person wrote about today in the Dispatch, you may have seen it, that I voted against. I voted against it because it wasn't paid for. It's common sense, right? Well, you will see more of that between now and the election, where my opponent will say, I didn't do this, and I hate this, and I don't like them, and I'm just a mean, awful person. Well, you know what? We owe it to our kids and our grandkids to fix this problem now, not 10 years from now. And we can't do this anymore. And the scary thing for me is, and I'll end this part, let me talk about healthcare first, before I go there. Tim Geithner, the Treasury Secretary, came and talked to the Ways and Means Committee, and he said, this president's serious about budgeting the federal budget like a family budget. That was my reaction. And I had the budget in front of me, and so I even laughed harder inside in looking at it. And so I said to him, I said, you know, sir, my dad came to this country, and he didn't get a credit card until he was 60 years old. And he only did that after my sisters and I showed him how he could actually make money off the credit card by getting money back. And so my dad thinks he's screwing the credit card companies by no fee and getting money back. But the point of the matter is that my dad believes in paying as you go, true pay as you go, not borrowing and pretend pay as you go, like we have in Washington. And I look at your budget here, and I don't know how you can say that it's budgeting like a family budget. And let me give you an example of that. In the last year, in the last year that Republicans controlled the House and the Senate, we had 3 point. Let me get this right here. We had $2.5 trillion, $2.5 trillion of money coming in from you, the taxpayer. And we spent $2.7 trillion. So we had roughly 160, I'm rounding, $160 million deficit that year, too much. Well, the 2 years later, in fiscal year 2009, so it was fall of 2008, as you know, the economy dropped off. And then we saw those revenues go down. So it came down to about $2.1 trillion of your tax money coming in that fiscal year. And then Congress spent $3.5 trillion. And then you see this deficit. And so I said to Geithner, okay, I'm not assigning blame, but you see the numbers, 2.1 trillion, 3.5 trillion in spending. You need to fix this. Now the way you guys fix it is you raise taxes. You don't cut spending. Now I would do it differently. This is what you do. You raise revenue. You increase taxes on Americans. And I'm not even going to be critical of that. This is what you choose to do. And so we see over the next 2 years that you are going to raise revenue to meet what you're spending, right? So we see that revenues are projected with your tax increases to be $3.6 trillion. I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you. So we spent 3.5. You're raising revenue in the next couple of years. My dad would say, okay, maybe I would have done it differently, but at least now you got your revenues to where you're spending, right? No. During that time you raised all those revenues, you raised spending another $1 trillion. So you still have $1 trillion hole. So you're bringing in 3.6 now trillion, but you're spending 4.6 trillion. And it gets worse. You look at over 5 years out, you raise more revenue, but you raise spending again even more. How is that pay-go? In fact, let me give you a better example. This week, the Democrats are going to allegedly put on the House floor a bill to cut taxes for some people. That's what they say. Now, actually, there's some existing taxes, tax rates, existing, that they're going to extend this year to the end of this year. And then they will expire on January 1st of next year. And they're going to do that, and there's some pretty popular ones, but they're only extending it to the end of the year. To pay for that, they're going to permanently raise taxes on other people. Permanently raising taxes on people who have general partnerships, whether it's a real estate partnership or a small business like a cleaners. If it's set up as a general partnership, they're going to raise your taxes permanently to pay for an existing tax rate, to extend it just till the end of this year. Unbelievable. I thought I'd seen everything. And then, as part of that bill, they're going to not pay for extending unemployment insurance, COBRA, fix the doctor's pay, which they didn't do in healthcare, which is about $300 million, and they're going to call that emergency, so they don't have to pay for it. So they're going to raise taxes to pay for extending a current tax rate until the end of the year. They're going to do that permanently, and then they're going to waive paying for all these spending issues because it's an emergency. I'm becoming cynical about how Washington operates. This is unbelievable. And then they wonder why people are getting frustrated. But then if I vote against it, guess what? The TV commercial says, this heartless Republican voted against the unemployed, voted against people getting insurance, voted against doctors who are treating Medicare patients, and voted against these popular tax cuts. It is just amazing. But again, you know what? Let's have that fight. Let's have that fight. I think Americans are more engaged than ever and are going to understand when the facts are presented to them. It's too important. It's too important for our kids and our grandkids. So you look at the debt, you look at the taxes, you look at health care. And from the very beginning, I knew that we were going to have a problem with health care. I thought the president was brilliant at the beginning of the process because he talked about how we got to bend the cost curve, we got to fix, we got to fix Medicare, we got to strengthen it, we got to fix Medicaid, we got to fix liability reform, we got to make this more affordable for everybody, we got to cover more people, apple pie, all this stuff. And then we sit in a meeting. The Ways and Means Committee, Charlie Rangel is our chairman, or was our chairman at the time, last spring, and they began drafting the health care bill in the House. And he gathers us in a room, just members of the Ways and Means Committee, Democrats and Republicans, and he has us around a table. He's a pretty affable guy. He says, listen, we want to make this bipartisan. This is a big issue. This shouldn't be about Democrats and Republicans. This should be bipartisan. We want Democrat and Republican votes. And so we hope that we all can come together. We know everybody might not want to vote for this, but we want Democrat and Republican votes, and we hope you can join us.